Hello, everybody. We're starting a new show, a new Forças do Brasil show, a very special one this time. And we have here an honor, a privilege, happiness of receiving, getting Mr. Laith Marouf from Lebanon. Uh, and we are recording it on Wednesday. So Mr. Marouf, thank you so much for accepting my invitation. It's an honor to have you here.
Well, thank you so much. I'm going to say Mr. Santos because you called me Mr. Marouf, but I think we should go past that. My name is Laith, and I'm so glad to be on your show, Mario, and to speak to the audience in Brazil.
Laith is a journalist from Lebanon, and he is with Free Palestine TV that covers the resistance, many resistance movements, especially in Lebanon, and he's done a very special work on this target. And he is with, I repeat, he's with Free Palestine TV. That's, if I may say, Free Palestine video. Is that correct?
Yes, that's the website. It's we can't buy the .tv. Somebody is holding it and is refusing to sell it.
Oh, okay. Well, and so people go there and be informed about the really amazing work that Free Palestine TV does. Laith, tell us tell us what's happening right now in this very surprising situation in Lebanon, where in which we witness some unexpected strength from the part of the national resistance in Lebanon, especially from Hezbollah, against of course, much stronger enemy, which is Israel. They said they would go to the Litani River, that they invaded Lebanon, and they would reach and annex the area until the Litani River. Has they succeeded in doing that? What's the status? You've been visiting that area. What's really the situation? Which areas are in the possession of Israel, and which are not? Are they going to succeed?
I think they are not going to succeed. In fact, if we look at the map of control in the south of Lebanon, we see that the Zionists are trying to achieve some theatrical wins, and they're aiming to capture the two major population centers south of the Litani River. On the one hand, we have the coastal city of Tyre, which is archaeological human treasure, 6,000-year-old city. And they've been pushing on the coastline for 3 months now almost. And they haven't been able to push further than 5 kilometers from the border. They're halfway between Naqoura, which is the border point, and Tyre, on an area called Al-Bayada. They've been stuck there for the last month and a half in Al-Bayada, getting bombed and bombarded by the resistance. Similarly, in the central sector of the south of Lebanon, the major city is Nabateea, and they decided to cross from the closest point between the border of Palestine, occupied Palestine, and the Litani River. This is the Litani River is 3.5, almost 4 kilometers away from the border at that point. And it took them 2 months to get to the Litani River from this 3.5, 4 kilometers. And they lost tens of armored vehicles and tanks in that effort. And then after they crossed the river from that point, they pushed up to capture the Crusader castle of Beaufort that overlooks the city of Nabatea. And it took them almost 3 weeks to just go up this hill. And they've been stuck there since they captured Beaufort Castle, becoming easy targets for the resistance in this area that doesn't have much vegetation or homes to hide in and so forth. So yesterday I went down to Nabatea and with other journalists and so forth, and we were watching for the whole day.
Just yesterday.
Yes, yesterday, wave after wave. Of course, it was a dangerous situation to get down there, but we have to do our job and film and report on what's happening. But we watched all day as Hezbollah's fighters were targeting Israeli tanks and APCs and gathering positions relentlessly. And every time the Israelis getting targeted, they respond by doing air raids, targeting residential homes and residential or civilian infrastructure. So it seems like over the last 3 years, the Israelis haven't been able to defeat any of their adversaries in any military confrontation, including in Gaza against the Palestinian resistance in an extermination camp that is besieged. And from that point on, I think since October 7, it seems like the Israelis have decided to redesign their military activities and use the tactic of genocide and ethnic cleansing as their primary military tactic. Because they cannot defeat any of their enemies, neither Hamas, Jihad, Islamic Jihad, or Hezbollah. And as we see yesterday, the Minister of Security Ben Gvir, the Israeli minister, said that they should be kidnapping Lebanese women and children and raping them in order to break the will of the resistance in Lebanon. And as we saw, that was already used in Gaza with the mass rape of Palestinian prisoners and so forth, but that didn't work. So the even that tactic of genocide, war crimes, and ethnic cleansing as a primary military tactic is not working.
What was this the initial goal of this operation in invading Lebanon? Was this the situation they expected, or were they surprised by what they faced?
I think the goal, the strategy, what the Israelis have been trying to do for almost 100 years right now, is to force the Palestinian and Arabic and Muslim people of the world to bow down to them, to accept them as supreme, as chosen, and to willingly say that we are less than, right? And to just run away and give them everything they want. And of course, it's 100 years, and this is not working, even with all those genocides over this 100 year. And as we see the technologies of war have changed so drastically, and the innovations that the Axis of Resistance members have been putting forward are widening the gap between the dreams and illusions of supremacy that the Israelis have and the reality on the ground. So we saw in Gaza, for instance, the Palestinian resistance innovating that 4-dimensional warfare that includes all the underground. We saw the resistance in Lebanon innovating with the use of ATGMs and the FPVs now. And we saw, of course, the innovations of Iran with hypersonic missiles and advanced drones that have changed the face of military warfare in general. So the gap between what the Israelis think as a chosen people, as having the right to do whatever they want to, is widening in their ability to implement that supremacy through military victories.
So now they're facing the situation in which the Zionists are attacking. They are attacking, well, the south, residences and infrastructure, and they are also attacking Beirut, especially some areas of Beirut, isn't it? What is this? All this population? How many people? Close to 1 million people being dislocated inside Lebanon. Where does this population go?
Yeah, it's almost getting to be 1.5 million people with the expansion of the orders of dislocation by Israel to include areas around between the Zahrani River and the Litani River. So where, those people are right now internally displaced. A lot of them have gone to other parts of the country. The majority of public spaces and institutions that were open for the internally displaced are overcrowded. The regions in the north of the country and the mountain are also overcrowded because of the movement of all of the south to the north. But Lebanon has been used to this situation for 60, 70 years almost, right, of nonstop war. So it's generation after generation. It's almost like people are used to this here. So another population other than Lebanon that would have faced the same situation, there would have been a societal collapse. But because of how this is almost the norm, and we don't want it to be the norm, but this is how it is, the society comes into action very fast. And because there is no real government or state in Lebanon since 1942 that has been offering zero services to the citizens, there is a lot of sects-based community organizations, neighborhood and village-based, and so forth. So we see immediately the religious and regional organizations and community groups coming into action and filling the gap where the state never ever provided those services. And I think this is one of the indications of how resilient the Lebanese population is, and how even with all that talk about sectarianism and hate between different parts of the society, that is actually exaggerated by the imperialist, and Lebanese people help and save each other anytime it's possible.
It's unbelievable situation. What would you say about going back to, you went, yes, as you said, you went yesterday to the close to the front line, isn't it? Very close to the front line. What did you see there?
Yeah, I mean, driving to Nabatea was very dangerous because the main road to Nabatea, yesterday when we were driving, at least 3 cars were targeted by Israeli drones. So we had to take side roads through other villages to get to Nabatea, but that was also very dangerous. We didn't realize, but at that point, the roads were very empty, the villages were abandoned, and again, we saw multiple attacks on the way. When we got to Nabatea, we were at this hospital just at the edge of the city that is overlooking the valley where Nabatea city is, and we can see also the battlefield around Beaufort Crusader Castle. And it was clear that on the battlefield, the Israelis are suffering. And you can see those FPVs and missiles hitting Israeli gathering points. And at the same time, The Israelis were responding with massive air raids on the villages between Beaufort Castle and Nabatea city. They were trying to, for now, as I said, a week and a half, advance from Beaufort Castle on Nabatea on 2 different axes, but they're stuck. And their only response is to do massive air raids. One of those villages between Nabatea and Beaufort Castle, this today had 20 air raids on this small village. And of course, the Israelis are using these bunker buster missiles. So you could imagine a small village, 20 of those GBUs, the whole village is wiped off the map. But that's not helping them. They do these air raids, and then they do fire cover through artillery with howitzers on the same location, trying to kind of open a path for their soldiers. But the minute they are done with the air raids and the howitzer suppression, and they try to advance, they fall into ambushes by air from FPVs, on the ground from Hezbollah fighters that appear from nowhere, and they have huge losses and retreat. And we saw that all over throughout the day yesterday, multiple times. They try to advance, they get hit, air cover comes in, another hour they try it again, they lose again, they retreat, and so on and so forth. So they're stuck in that situation, and this is why they decided to try to attack Beirut to create a mass casualty event that may draw in Iran and then draw in the United States to give cover to Israel. And this is where we are at this point.
When you say, I have 2 questions. When you say that's where the Zionists are, you mean armored vehicles? Is that correct? Because they don't advance by foot, walking. They go inside some vehicles. Is that correct? Second, when you say air raids, you mean attacks coming from airplanes or from other means?
Both airplanes, fighter jets, and drones. But they're depending heavily on actually fighter jets. Hezbollah multiple times over the last week or so fired on Israeli drones. So they're depending more and more on the fighter jets flying very high. The Israelis cannot move in big columns of armored vehicles because they're so easy to target. So what we see the Israelis doing is advancing 1, 2, 3 tanks maximum at a time, and still getting hit. We also are seeing actually the Israelis using infantry. Because their vehicles are such easy targets for the FPVs, we saw multiple times, every 2 or 3 days, Israeli special forces trying to do night raids or sending their scouts to figure out where is the defensive lines of Hezbollah so their armored vehicles can advance in the column. And every time they're falling also in ambushes and traps. So the armored vehicles is the only way they can protect their soldiers, but those armored vehicles are becoming tombs for whoever is in them. So they have no choice but to send in infantry. And again, you see like all of warfare is changing because of the innovations of the resistance.
Yeah, you would say that warfare is changing. You mean the old armored vehicles may not be as effective as before? Is it so? And they don't have any other resource to make up for it, is it?
Yes. You see, all of these tanks and armored vehicles are becoming easy targets before something that's as cheap as an FPV, right? And we can see that also happening in naval warfare, right? The United States had all these aircraft carriers and it's projecting power through them In fact, Western European civilization for the last 600 years had a primacy over the waters and the ability, the unmatched ability to project power through naval force. Well, the missiles of Iran and Yemen and their drones have now ended 600 years of Western primacy over the sea. And now we will be having to see how the everyone that has aircraft carriers has to dump them and find a different way to project power. So yes, huge changes are happening because of these innovations where smaller powers can create weapons at very cheap cost that can take out something as an aircraft carrier or the Merkavas.
What else did you see when you yesterday you went to this area, southern Lebanon? Are there people living there normally? Is there big cities like Tyre? What's the situation there? How many people are there in Tyre? 100,000? I don't know how many. 50,000? I don't know. But maybe is there people living, wandering around in this among these rubble, destroyed areas? What is your assessment of that?
Yeah, Nabataea's population usually is around 130, 150,000. I think Tyre's population is very similar to that. But the vast majority of people have left. They've tried to stay for a long time until the most recent waves of mass bombardment on the two cities. We saw exodus and people leaving. But there is a lot of people with disabilities, elders that don't have extended family, people that can't find any housing anywhere else or don't have money. The Palestinian refugees in the refugee camps around Tyre on the coast, there's 3 Palestinian refugee camps, and the other refugee camps across the country are packed, the Palestinian refugee camps. So those are, I would say out of the 130,000 residents in Tyre, maybe around 20,000 remain dispersed. Okay, in Nabataea, the situation is even worse in terms of how many left, because there is no Palestinian refugee camp. So there's more mobility, and Nabataea is the economic hub of the south. So the population is more well off and they can find other places to rent. So when we were traveling in Nabataea, it was clear the only people that were staying is people that don't have money at all or don't have family somewhere else, elders and disabled people. And the way we were staying at one of the main hospitals that have stayed open, and the hospital and the volunteers have set up a community kitchen, and they are distributing food for anyone that's still in the city, because there's no groceries, there's no restaurants, there's nothing. And that's a very dangerous job, for these volunteers to come out with the food and try to reach people in their homes, these elders, and they're being hunted by drones as they're trying to deliver aid to those who stayed at their homes.
What's your assessment of the Zionists' losses during this campaign? I heard that Hezbollah has done quite a lot of damage to these forces, including being able to reach some high-ranking officers. Is that correct? What's the situation? Are they able to maintain this campaign for, I would say, indefinitely?
I think definitely Hezbollah has a ability to have a long war in comparison to Israel. And when we look at the numbers of Israeli tanks destroyed in the last 3 months since the beginning of this confrontation, we're like around 420 tanks destroyed.
420.
Yeah.
They are very expensive, isn't it?
They are very expensive, these Merkava tanks, and the Israelis, they don't really produce these tanks. It's assembling of parts from American, European manufacturers, and the only thing that the Israelis manufacture is the chassis and the sidings, the armored, on the sides of the Merkava. So there's already, of course, shortages in delivery of parts from the various, imperial components across the West, and there's shortages in delivery of raw iron and so on to Israel because of the blockades and all the problems that the whole world supply chains problems. And now, if we take this number of 420 tanks destroyed in 3 months, and we compare it to the declared numbers of tanks that Israel has. Before October 7, 2023, Israel declared that it had around 2,000 tanks. In June 2025, so a year from now, a year ago, the Israelis announced that they already lost 1,000 of the 2,000 tanks in the battlefield in Gaza and in South Lebanon. So they already had lost 50% of their tanks. Now you add to it 420 out of the 1,000 left already destroyed, and now you're seeing how the Israeli military ground forces specifically are collapsing. And those numbers of 420 tanks in the last 3 months this doesn't include APCs. This doesn't include armored bulldozers, and so clearly their ground forces are suffering hugely. Now, when we talk about Israeli soldiers' casualties, even if we because the Israelis hide always their casualties and lie about them. But if we want to say that, in a tank, usually there's 4 to 8 soldiers. And we just want to take the medium of saying 6 soldiers dead or injured in each of those attacks. We're in the thousands of Israeli soldier injuries just in the last 3 months. In terms of officers, this is very important to note because we have visual confirmation of the FPVs targeting command and control vehicles and command and control centers, both in South Lebanon and inside occupied Palestine. And so we know for sure, admitted by the Israelis with names, around 20 high-ranking officers dead in the battlefield in South Lebanon and in North Palestine. A couple of those are commanding officers of the most advanced brigades, the Givati and the Golani brigades. There was also an incident where Hezbollah FPVs attacked the convoy of the Brigadier General, the Israeli military commander of all the operations in South Lebanon. And these FPVs were flying inside North occupied Palestine and hunted the commander-in-chief of the operations, the Brigadier General, and he escaped barely by jumping out of his car, and the convoy, 3 cars were destroyed, and some of his subordinates were killed in this attack. So this means that Hezbollah has surveillance, is flying drones and is monitoring the movement. It is intercepting communications. It knows the movement of the commanding officers and is hunting them one by one. And that's an indication of a very sophisticated operation.
And there is video evidence of all these that you're mentioning, isn't it?
Yes, and I think this is where Hezbollah, and over the last 3 years, I feel the axis of resistance is succeeding better in propaganda because they are putting forward these videos showing us the operations in Gaza, in Lebanon, and the images don't lie. And you see these Israeli soldiers jumping out of their tanks or jeeps or being hunted on the ground. And the only thing that the Israelis are doing as a comeback to these videos is releasing those videos of Palestinian prisoners getting raped, right? So this shows you how the military propaganda of the axis of resistance is now, have defeated the military propaganda of Israel. We can talk about the other kinds of propaganda, but military propaganda right now of the axis of resistance is unmatched. And the Israelis and the Americans have almost given up on competing with this military propaganda.
Yes, and as a result of this, the whole aggression of Israel and the U.S., Israel is nowadays the most, how can I say, to use a strong word, the most hated country in the world. The Zionists are just being a failure of propaganda, unbelievable. Whereas the axis of resistance is a huge story of, how can I say, attracting support from all over populations everywhere in the world. It's unbelievable. But tell me, recently, well, you describe a situation in which Israel and the Zionists are in some sort, and the U.S. are in some deep difficulties to succeed in this effort. And recently, Iran extended its deterrence to Lebanon, which is a really new. So it says there will be not only says, but acts as if there will be no real ceasefire without stopping these aggressions from Israel and the Zionists against Lebanon. Is it what's the scenario that this opens? Do you see an end of this conflict nearing?
This war has been ongoing for almost 100 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And it started in creating this Jewish exclusionist apartheid colony that cannot stay and exist without genociding the indigenous people on scales of the genocides that happened in the Americas. You cannot create a settler colonial project if there is indigenous large population that is going to fight you back. Look at Bolivia at any moment right now. It's going to return to being an indigenous state. Okay, so obviously the Israelis, since the year 2020, when the Palestinian population bounced back to being the majority within historical Palestine, have come to the conclusion that they have to ethnically cleanse and genocide the Palestinians in order to guarantee their project's continuity. And that's what we're seeing. Now, over the last few months, since Iran defeated the United States, there is multiple things that are firsts, okay, that have happened. As I mentioned, the end of the West's ability to project power through a navy, that's 600 years gone. Okay, we had the end of air supremacy, that's 100 years of power gone. We've also just saw the West destroy its accumulated propaganda power over human mind since World War II. Everything about international law, human rights, women's rights, children's rights, all of that thrown in the garbage, okay? And it's impossible for the West to regain this propaganda power probably for 3 generations, okay? And we all have to forget everything that we saw for them to have that propaganda power again. And now, with Iran defeating the United States and Israel, we see Iran not only extending its sovereignty over its surrounding regions and the Persian Gulf and its neighbors, but for the first time since its Islamic Revolution in 1979, attacking an adversary first. Usually, since 1979, Iran didn't attack anybody. Always it was attacked and then it defended itself. This attack on Israel 2 days ago was the first time Iran actually takes a attack position before being attacked. The second thing that is important about it is that this is the first time Iran attacks somebody not for attacking it or its territory, but to defend a third party, which is Lebanon and Hezbollah. So this is a change in the strategic outlook of the Iranian military use of force and the posture that it had. And I think the third layer that makes this so historic, this moment, is that we have not seen any power, any state on the planet go out of its territory to defend a third party outside its territory since the collapse of the Soviet Union, except the United States. It's the US that went and attacked Yugoslavia supposedly to protect the Croatians and the prisoners. It's the US that went and attacked Iraq to free Kuwait and every other war since then. In fact, since the end of World War II, we only saw 2 other states do that, and there was China and the Soviet Union to defend North Korea and Vietnam. So to see Iran being the first country since the collapse of the Soviet Union to actually act in this way, other than the United States and its imperial components, this is a ground-shattering and situation. I think we're seeing precedents, so many precedents happen after another. That's a lot of us is taking times for us to really recognize how historic these moments are.
You think this is proof that the situation of Iran in geopolitical terms has already changed so early?
Yes, Iran now is not only a regional superpower, it's a superpower on a global scale. We didn't even see China or Russia do this. Russia is not coming, or China is not coming to the defense of Cuba or Venezuela in this way, right? So to see Iran doing that, that means it has already stepped into the top tier of power on a global scale. And if and the United States is trying to ruin this moment or prove it wrong and break this formula with these counterattacks or attacks that we saw over the last 24 hours.
Totally. Do you see dangers in this situation? I mean, the reaction of the superpower against this new status of Iran, and of course of the planet, as you said, and of course especially on the Persian Gulf and the Southeast Asia. That's a lot. Do you see dangers in this situation?
We were in a very dangerous moment when the United States got its behind whipped by Iran during the 44-day war. The U.S. elite, the governing forces, were almost going to use nuclear weapons, right? So the U.S. used all this power, and it couldn't do anything. And then we had Trump threaten to erase Iranian civilization. and that was basically a threat to use nuclear weapon. And most probably behind the scenes, all the other nuclear powers, China, Russia, North Korea, Belarus, called and said they will be next to use a nuclear weapon. I think even Pakistan would have threatened to use a nuclear weapon because, throwing a nuclear weapon on Iran or attacking a nuclear site in Iran, having a nuclear fallout with the wind pushing east, it means all the watershed of the Himalayas will be irradiated, and hundreds of millions of people in Pakistan and India will be starving and going on a march. So whole societies, civilizations will be destroyed if you try to destroy Iran with a nuclear weapon. And that's a survival issue. So Pakistan would have probably threatened to retaliate on Israel with a nuclear weapon if Iran is attacked. Not because they're not part of the imperial order or that they are friends with Iran or anything like this, but just from pure survival point of view. And we even saw the Pope of Catholicism step out in the middle of the night, out of his office, out of his home, and call the media into the street in Rome to dissuade the United States from using nuclear weapons. So I think we passed that point. The US will not be using nuclear weapons. The only threat that we have right now is the rogue entity of Israel, who is clearly right now losing the imperial military protection that it had. And it's going to become more and more desperate to it. It hasn't been able to defeat the smallest of enemies like the Palestinians in Gaza without that never-ending supply of weapons that the West has given it. So if there's even a cutting of military supplies to Israel, it will collapse in the face of unarmed Palestinians in the West Bank, okay? So I think Israel is the biggest threat of the use of nuclear weapons. It's the biggest threat on humanity from this point on. And if social movements and revolutionaries around the world want to concentrate on one thing, it is that we should be working towards extracting the nuclear weapons that Israel had, very similar to what happened before the collapse of the apartheid regime in South Africa. A lot of people don't remember this, but the apartheid regime in South Africa had nuclear weapons, and it was occupying all its neighbors, Namibia, Angola, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Zambia, and was genociding people there and was being defeated and was threatening to use nuclear weapons in Africa. And that's when the Western elites and governments moved in, extracted the nuclear weapons of South Africa, and unfortunately gave them to Israel. And that helped to make sure that the collapse of the apartheid regime doesn't draw the whole world into a nuclear winter. And this is the same moment that we're living right now. We need to be working to extract the nuclear weapons from Israel because it is already foretold that it's going to cease to exist.
Well, suddenly our focus became so wide and threatening that we even run the risk of forgetting about the micro, relatively situation in Lebanon. Is there to be any hope of these so-called ceasefire negotiations in Lebanon? So that this could open a window of how can I say, peace and stability that could spread to the whole conflict in the area?
Unfortunately, although I love, I want to see an end to all this death and so forth, but unfortunately, they will not be for multiple reasons. Let's pretend, for argument's sake, that there is right now a real ceasefire in Lebanon and in the whole region. That will mean that the Israeli elite will have to deal with the reckoning of the genocides that they committed in Gaza and in Lebanon. You started about talking about how Israel is the most hated country right now on the planet. Even the most propagandized populations like Germany, something like 72 or 73% of them hate Israel. Okay, so that means that all of the social movements in the world and human rights activists and so on, if there is no wars around the West Asia, they will concentrate on bringing to justice the Israeli leadership, military and political leadership that caused these genocides. And that's something that the Israelis don't want to deal with. They know the reckoning is coming. At any minute, there's a stoppage of this war, there'll be that reckoning. So this is why they keep on pushing for more war, okay? Because they know the only way they can get away with genocide is to create facts on the ground. And their facts on the ground is more genocide, more ethnic cleansing, more territory they steal, more resources they steal, and they think that will create more power for them. And by the end of it, if they kill all the Palestinians or kill all the Lebanese people, well, it's whoever is going to come for them, it's not going to matter, because it's like trying to make the United States pay for the genocide of indigenous people now of the United States. That's not going to change anything. There's not enough indigenous people in the United States to change that reality. We made the fact of creating the United States as permanently as a colony, and there's no threat to it. So that's what why the Israelis keep on pushing for more war. They think the only way they can survive the reckoning of the genocides is by erasing anyone that's going to ask for their rights after the end of this battle.
And there's also a problem maybe with the terms of this negotiation, isn't it? Who's negotiating it? And are they really? Well, I mean, you have on your side. On one side, you have the Lebanese government or whatever it is, and the other side is Israel, and the third part is the U.S. What can we expect from this sort of negotiation that excludes Hezbollah, and what's the future of it?
Yeah, it's like the three parties, the Lebanese government, the Israeli government, the American government are actually one. So they're negotiating with themselves. And this shows us how detached the elite and the empire are from the realities on the ground. And, no matter what, the president or prime minister of Lebanon, who were appointed by the American embassy at the height of the power of the empire after the collapse of Damascus and the government of Bashar al-Assad, the genocide in Gaza, the pager terrorist attack and the assassinations of leadership of Hezbollah. So at that point was the high of imperial power in Western Asia, and they put in this prime minister and president. But now things have changed so drastically that this president and prime minister, they don't have any internal power cards that they can offer the empire. The military of Lebanon cannot disarm Hezbollah. The Wahhabi death squads in Syria that may have been used to attack Lebanon to confront Hezbollah are too busy with killing minorities inside Syria, the Alawis, the Shia, the Druze, and so on, and unable to hold the country together. So they can't come and threaten Hezbollah. So the only thing that is there is the Israeli Air Force that is bombarding the country. That's not going to change anything on the ground. Okay. In fact, we just saw the Prime Minister of Lebanon a few hours ago earlier order all the port authorities, seaports and airport, to look for fiber optic wires and to ban them from entering the country. These fiber optic wires is what Hezbollah is using for the FPVs. So they're not jammed through radio. But that's so crazy, because this is going to affect all the internet business in the country, all the networking of offices and companies. So, and Hezbollah is still going to smuggle whatever it wants, right? So this is how desperate the prime minister of Lebanon is to show master in the White House that he's doing something to help Israel.
I'm curious about this word that's came to our vernacular use, proxy. What's the meaning of this word in terms of Hezbollah and Iran? Can you explain to me? Because I suspect that Hezbollah relies mostly on its own forces, on internal forces from Lebanon, and that's the miracle. That's the secret. But I don't know. I'm from Brazil. Can you explain that to me?
Well, the imperialists are trying to delegitimize Hezbollah as a patriotic movement for liberation by trying to say that they are following the orders of Iran as a proxy. When in the reality is actually the flipped. It is the United States that has vassals and proxies in the region. All the Arab monarchies, Israel itself, Turkey, Cyprus, all of those are vassals of the empire. Just for the listeners to understand the relationship between Hezbollah and Iran, this is a relationship that predates even not from Hezbollah. The Shia population in Lebanon and the Shia population in Iran have a relationship that goes 5 centuries. Iran used to be a Sunni Muslim country, not a Shia country. And Lebanese preachers 500 years ago traveled to Iran and converted the population in Iran to Shiism. And they are revered, these Lebanese Shia preachers. They have shrines for them in Iran. So this is a deep societal connection that doesn't have to do with only that momentary alliance between, let's say, the Islamic Revolution in Iran and Hezbollah as a fighting force. And so this is why it's kind of almost impossible to break this bond. The other thing is that when the Islamic Revolution in Iran happened in 1979, the Lebanese fighters, beginnings of what was to become Hezbollah, at that same time, we had the invasion of Lebanon by Israel in 1982 and the capture of Beirut and the destruction of Beirut and the exit of the Palestinian Liberation Organization led by Arafat from Lebanon. And there's this gap of resistance. And we had all these Lebanese Shia people going and fighting in Iran to defend it from the invasion by Iraq. And then this bond being built, and then at the same time, Iranian military experts and so on coming to Lebanon to learn from here. So we had a bond that is both ways, going both ways. Lebanese resistance bringing its expertise to Iran, and Iranians bringing their expertise to Lebanon. And this relationship now is unbreakable. It's become an alliance. And I think the West likes to lie to itself about Hezbollah being a proxy to Iran, when in fact, if you really look at it, Iran knows that its fate is not if it's left alone, it cannot survive. It needs Hezbollah, it needs Yemen, it needs Syria, which it lost, it needs Iraq, It needs other parties that are also sovereignty seeking for it to have an environment that is supportive of its needs. So, Hezbollah is not a proxy. Sometimes Hezbollah is almost leading the decisions. Remember when Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, before his martyrdom, everybody knew his speeches set the direction of the whole of the axis of resistance, more even than the speeches of the martyred Ayatollah Khamenei. So it is an alliance that is deep, that has historical and civilizational roots, that is manifesting today in this manner of alliance, military alliance between Hezbollah and Iran.
Very nice, fantastic. To wrap up, let's go to the beginning then, to the beginning of everything, the Palestinians. So what do you make of the situation in Gaza? Is it possible that Hamas will come up with a surprise as big as Hezbollah was able to?
I think there is surprises that are going to come. There was, of course, the surprise of October 7th, unprecedented, an extermination camp population that is besieged, breaking the siege and capturing 12 Israeli bases and capturing or killing 12 Israeli soldiers, generals on that first day, and innovating with that four-dimensional warfare, with the underground warfare. But right now, I think the possibility of return to full armed confrontation inside historic Palestine is going to come from the West Bank. So the axis of resistance is building the capabilities of the resistance in the West Bank. It hasn't taken a decision to reactivate that at this moment. There will be a perfect moment for it. But as we see, if the United States exits Western Asia, that would be the moment for armed resistance to be reactivated in the West Bank. And I think it's coming. I don't know how long this war is going to last. It's already lasted almost 3 years. I think it's going to last in overall another maybe 2 years. I know this is a long time and people don't want to hear it, but there's not going to be a knockout by the axis of resistance of imperial force, because they don't want a trigger of a nuclear war, and they also don't want a rapid collapse of empire, which will destroy global economies, harm a lot of people, will also leave huge gaps of power in across the world, where militias will become primary and things will disintegrate into chaos. So slowly, we will see the power of Israel collapsing as the United States exits Western Asia. And then, and only then, we will see a return to the battle inside historic Palestine.
Unbelievable. Okay, with this we reached to the end of our conversation. I'd like to thank you, Laith, so much for coming. It was an honor to have you here, and I expect you to come again to describe your work. And people, go to freepalestinetv.video and know the work of Laith and his comrades to bringing the truth about the conflict in the Middle East, especially in Lebanon, to ourselves. Thank you so much, Laith.
Thank you very much, Mario, for having me, and I'll see you soon, inshallah.
Great. And with this, we come to the end, and that's it. Goodbye.